all right, then what makes someone think that they want to have sex young? Well, sometimes you find magazines that make you want to do decisions earlier, as you just want to copy it. You're curious of those pictures that you see. Ever remember thinking that? I remember thinking back on these, so I can talk about it easier and certain things. What makes them want to do it is that they believe that it'll make them cooler, older, stuff like that. So you might see kids do things that adults are meant to do, right? Because of these things. It's demonstrated, it's not punished hard enough. It could be done, as in you do it in your own room, in your own areas and stuff like that, is why an outcome would usually come, right? When it comes to kids having sex, right? So when kids have sex, if it's an experiment, they usually will do it, and if they like it, they will continue. In some ages when they're young, it doesn't really function, right? And so they usually typically stop, that I've heard people try in those areas. I even did, right? I didn't do it much because it wasn't the right time. The feeling doesn't match of what it should be, right? Because you're not there. And you can get that as you learn in life, that you go, hang on, this is why they're doing it at that age, and I don't see pictures of me doing it at this age. You know what I mean, Emma? Yeah. And that becomes logical. That's how people start thinking in a certain age and stuff like that, right? But if they like it, then they'll go, well, shit, even though they get that logic in the end too, they go, well, I don't care because I always liked it, right? And so did the other person. But in a lot of cases, when you go to do things early, you'll find the other one is not the same. And you usually have to do other tricks that you may not like to deceive and manipulate. You know what I mean, Emma? Yeah. Right? Which is becoming more into the sin area and stuff like that. So why are they doing that, right? That's why that area, when it comes to children having sex, is very low, right? Because it usually doesn't happen. And they usually can't get to these areas when it comes to porno magazines and stuff like that. Even though today we have the internet and had issues on that, they can more than ever. As futures get into the future than what we had to deal with in the past. And so what makes a bad child? Well, that continues to do something that can affect others. Because like I said, doesn't mean they like to do it, doesn't mean the others like to do it. So it also makes the area not be right? Because we always try to understand what is righteous for who in what. Like niggers say, right, sorry to say that, I just put out the point. Niggers are allowed to say niggers to niggers because it's all right for them to do that with niggers. So if kids believe it's all right to do what they do, then they will continue to do it, kind of thing, right? But if you try to do it, they'll say no, right? And you've got to make the difference between, is that happening or is it righteous, right? By science and with the collective outcome of a righteous outcome. Will doing something early affect a bad righteous outcome later, right? As a lot of people might say, I was young then, didn't know this, didn't know that. You hear this in the future, definitely when it comes to genetic changing. Being a girl to a boy and a boy to a girl, it's a similar thing, right? They might believe they want something or like something, but they're not in that education longer enough to see the real point of what decision are they making. And that's why sometimes adults make decisions for kids as they've got to that education, seen it, pass it, and so on. So you can get that advice and why adults should know better in certain areas and not be thinking about what the kids feel in areas of righteous science and balance and getting things to truck along righteously. And usually that happens because both sides agree. So to get something righteous is to talk about it, explain what's actually happening, what's going down as righteous as possible. And if they don't both like it, then it's not righteous. Pretty much true, Emma? Yeah. You can explain everything. You can explain that you shouldn't be doing things, stuff like that, but it's up to them to change. And if they like it, they won't, right? You've got to convince them to not like it, right? And sometimes friends' advice, people leaving, all these things like that is what we do. And so when it comes to kids having sex with their sis, so you have that, right? And then you've got, and that's normal experiment. And then sometimes you can go even worse. So people will go, well, that's pretty bad that this other kid's playing around with other kids, right? But then what's worse than that? That's a better way to put it. And that is one of them doing the same thing, but they want to do it with family members, right? And the same thing again in that area. If they liked it, I guess you could say it's okay, but what does it affect further on? So the other story, there'll be no effect really when it comes to what I'm about to talk about now, which it'll be like that until they believe it's not right, which is what history's done actually in a few areas where they used to date 8-year-olds, be married at 8, right, as they believed it was right, and they try to use facts about that, but it wasn't a correct balanced facts while it went higher, which I'll talk about in a minute. And so what makes sleeping with a family member not right and not promoted, because it becomes a bad outcome naturally, right, as they would say. And in that area, doing the same thing, even though they all like it and they're doing it, in the end, if you date your sister or have sex with your sister and they have babies, you may get away with it a few times, as histories after wars have even recovered themselves by having sex with their family, right? You hear that story in America, actually, right? And why they split up and different rules of how they thought to recover, right? And what they thought was righteous at that time too, is there's times to do something and times maybe not do something, right? And so when it comes to sleeping with their sisters at a time where their population was low, and you only did it a couple of times and then you change the law later on, or you say you can only do it twice or something like that, it's possible. But you don't want to promote it, because if they continue it, you're only going to get people with problems, deformities and stuff, as they've already proved in history. And so that's something you can't really promote, right? And if you did it, you'd want to see it not happening much. And if it did, it's all right. If it doesn't happen much, in fact, it may not affect much, right? But if you keep promoting it, which is why we shouldn't promote in certain areas, but we should always fix what we've promoted, it will continue. So if you want something to stop, you stop promoting it, like the government did with cigarettes. But you try not to bully when you go to stop things, because that can backfire, like promoting, right? So when it comes to kids having sex, and that same thing happens at adults, it means the same thing, right? So in two different sections, it doesn't even fit in that sector. And because of that sex thing, we've gone through this issue before, they actually changed it. So you're a little bit wiser as well, an older age of what they believed, to 16 in a lot of areas, some a little bit higher, maybe some a little bit lower in some countries around the world, before you can get married or believe that you can be with a partner. Because when you be with a partner and you're in your own private rooms and things, we expect things to happen, right? Just like when you're kids. That's why parents worry about kids, right? Because they go, oh, what are they doing? What are they up to? Are they at this stage? Could they be doing this stage? And all that. But really, you should be worried, but then you shouldn't be too worried, because eventually anything that happens will eventually get caught, right? And then you can teach from there, and they'll learn lessons in different levels and different times when they got caught, right? It's like smoking. Some people may smoke behind the scenes at home all the time, and some people believe they're not smokers because they never smoked at work, and then you find out they got cancer, right? Or you find out someone got pregnant, right? Eventually, things happen where the truth comes out. But if you do things righteously at the start, most of the time people will let you know as soon as possible, and you can make next decisions of what you're all going to do in these fields and why you do it, and explain righteously, and usually it should win. Then bully is what I say in these areas. As I've noticed when it comes to child sex, that they're doing it more and more often these days, aren't they, Emma? More in the teenager area, because that's when different people at different times, definitely with girls, right, they have their period. Once they have their period, and why we've had a battle in the world of when is it right for them, and that's why we waited to a little bit longer, because not everyone has it at the same time as well. So when they made it at 8 years old, because it was possible to have it at 8, even at 6 and 4, but round 8s and round average kind of thing, right? Because it was possible, they believed that they can marry them, but yet they were marrying people at 8 because it was 8 and not the period, right? You know, it was an age that hasn't even had their period yet. Can you imagine them getting raped, Emma? They're getting damaged before the body's ready to be penetrated in that area with a big item, right? And you can imagine all sorts of items out there, different sizes as well. The smaller one maybe not too bad, but the bigger ones can be terribly bad. And so that's why they stopped that area. Makes sense, doesn't it? Why they'd want to do such things. And yet some countries continue to do it, the more selfish countries, because they believe they can. And if you get a country which starts doing that, that virus will spread, and one day your country may be doing that same thing because they can, right? You don't want any country to have any law that's the start of a virus saying they're doing it because they can, and everyone has to suffer because they can. Unless you love that thing and you allow that. But most of the time people go, no, I didn't say anything about loving that law. They just did it because they can. You don't want that, right? You want it to be a righteous decision, at least a decision that you can because everyone wants it, or there's a righteous reason and balanced outcome of that thing. Is why we have science to help us guide us in that field. Because with that guidance, that's how we do science. So you do it with the same guidance everywhere. You don't have to I'm a scientist, and they go, what do you make? You don't have to be like that. Right? Science is in all fields. So what else have I got to say now? I heard that a kid was getting into trouble because they're having sex, and they're having sex with their family. So I decided to make this clip. It's a one-off clip, throw it out there, see how it goes. It's my first time in this area. It's in the now, no scripts, what I know, and what I can spit out, what I can remember, right? I think that's about it. I don't think I'm promoting anything here. I'm just talking about what is, and to help others see things. And so when actually I can get back to something. So when the kid wants to date or be with their sisters or their family members, what makes them sicker, what makes that sicker is if you tell them the outcome. So if they don't know this knowledge, they're not that sick yet. They only know the first thing, they're having sex. But if you tell them and they know this is what you call a continued sinner. What makes you a sinner now? You've got to know the next step. Before then, you're not really a sinner. That's why we've upgraded through life. If you don't know, you're not a sinner to God. It's like you just don't know. That's why Jesus said a certain word at the thing, that you're not a sinner, but you technically are, right? Because your whole you're not a sinner, you're all sinners, right? And that's sad. That's what Jesus was trying to say. And he's getting killed because you're all sinners. It's not just his fault. I can't just... And even if he just stopped, it's not going to happen because you've got an all-sinner outcome. Aliens will want to join up here because we'll more likely kill them, as I've talked about, as we have a collective sin. Huh? We haven't worked out the basics of actually being righteous. We talk about it a lot, and we hope for Santa Claus and stuff like this a lot, but we fantasize it and fiction it in a lot of areas to try to get the outcome, but we haven't got there yet, sadly. Right? We actually live in a dangerous world. Right? And so what makes that person sicker or a sinner worse is when you give them an education and they not change their mind. Because sometimes when you get an education, they might have thought the sex thing, but then, because I've seen a movie and I've heard about this through friends, but I know that if they find out the next information, they go, hang on, now that's sick, right? Now I get it, kind of thing. And if they do that and stop, then now they're not sinners. They just went through something, maybe it was a bit weird, right? As long as they're all happy. No one got hurt, so that's all right. But as long as you stop and you know about this information, you learn, you practice stop, right? Sometimes it takes a little while to get off things. But as soon as you stop, you're not a sinner. You might have found out, look at the baby's going in the corner, doing the flat out, right? As you didn't learn. And that's what the devil likes to do a lot. He likes to believe that you are a sinner, even though you haven't learned something. Because it goes just that one moment, like you're swearing, like I was talking about earlier, about the swearing part. Oh, you just did that. It gets hooked on this propaganda vision of binocular, right? And tries to make you believe all that's true, that it's right because you're a little kid and it's smarter than you, right? Something like that. That's why it keeps like saying around kids, kind of thing. Huh? And so if that continues when they're younger, right, or when they get older, so they'll end up making a choice or not. They might go quiet. When people go quiet and don't naturally say it, because you tell them what they need to say, and then they say you don't know if it's true because it might be in the moment. You're best never really to give them the answer when you're in the kid training. You want to wait and find out, and perhaps give them the answer if they keep continuing failing. Right? But you want to wait first, and then give them the answer, and then hope that they stop. But you'd hope that they see it first. That's true learning and getting it themselves and making the right decision instead of being pushed into it or believe that they should go into it. right? Which is what other people are doing around them. If you've solved it there, cut it out for a second. You won't get the problem when they're older. But if you don't, you have the same problem when they're older. That's why it'll continue. In fact, it'll get worse. And they'll do it better. They'll learn the tricks of deceit like everyone else does in that field, so they can keep on doing it. Right? And then in the end, if that's hiding, they'll teach other kids. It'll get taught. Somewhere will get practiced. And it will never fade away. Right? As they're, in the end, as the collective in these outcomes, are sinners. And they're not working at things, and they're too confused. They're rushing off in areas and making them too many jobs, like getting too many kids. They're still doing it today, and then rush off the hour. They've got this other problem here. They're not slowing down, and so they're continuing their sins, and they will get the outcomes of those sins, which is our history of we're losing things. We've lost species. We'll never get back from a million years and shit. That's a big lose, isn't it, Emma? Losing something you can never get back is why it'd be so expensive. But then you destroyed it because you wanted to rush and didn't want to learn and slow down. Yeah. That's what they're still doing today. Anyway, so I hope you all understand all that. I can speak now on YouTube without worrying about kids hearing about it. But if they do, I believe I've spoken in a way where I hope that I don't promote them doing something, but they see what they are. And if they were going to be what they are, they will continue anyway, here in my clip or not. Of what I spoke about when it comes to underage sex. Now, when it comes to, so when kids do things with kids and around the same age, 4 to 3 years, 5 years, we'll make 5 year mark, right? Is not really paedophilia because they're around the same age. Kids hang around naturally like that. Right? But when you go to older age, just before I leave, I want to talk about pedophile. When you go older than that, we'll say, so above the 5 years, right? If you wanted to make it a mark, then you can start to say this on the low mark, that they perhaps leading to the pedophile area. Or why, right? Do they like young-looking faces? Or do they like to manipulate is why they go young? Because there's different reasons too. And if they like young-looking faces, you go, well, just try not to hook up to that. You need to understand that they're not your go. You manipulate them. They can't be for you. You need to look around like I talked about in story time that an escort pays fix a problem with pedophiles by having young-looking women that naturally look like kids and then dress them up like them, like from school and shit. Satisfies the ego, right? It's a market. There's even a look for it. I believe that God even made those looks. What some people go, I hate looking like a kid. It doesn't help me anywhere. But yet there's some weirdo that's all perfect, good man and everything. It's weird how they wear like this, but it's true. All perfect, but he's just got this weird fetish that he likes to bang kids, right? Or the look of him. He doesn't want the kid. He just likes that look. That's his fetish, like someone likes a fat ass. That happens too. Some people go, that's disgusting. But it's not. It's a fetish. It's not actually trying to manipulate. There's the ones that manipulate and have the fetish, right? But then there's other ones that just go, I've got this bad fetish, which makes them keep thinking about, which may them do a point where you see some people don't do it till they're really old. And stuff like that. It took them a while to go, because the craving's there. You know that kind of feeling, Emma? And if you have a fetish craving that never goes away, you're bound to do it, kind of thing, right? And so to get rid of that fetish and that craving, that imagination and shit, is to play it out, right? And that's what this escort place was talking about. And I agree with them in that area. And it helps these other people who think they had nothing. Could get a rich man that's quite fine, or a person, or where they can make money from these people, and heal 2 birds with 1 stone. They're doing what they do, make money, and another person, and they're also stopping another person from wanting to play out a fantasy in his head that he shouldn't, right? But there's another place that you can, and if there's a place that you can, and then they play out those fantasies, that means it's even worse. But if there's a place where they can't, and they play out those fantasies, well, you'll probably see it happen more often because there's a place they can't relieve themselves. Isn't that right, Emma? And so a little quick fix wouldn't hurt, would it? Right? Until one day, perhaps you might not even need that, but perhaps it might always be there, like gay people turning up. And some people would say it's a disease, but perhaps it's part of the evolution of a balance as well. Because I believe if something's getting a bit out of balance, too much of it, and God and nature's trying to be nice, the first thing you do is try to slow down on breeding, wouldn't you, Emma? Yeah, and then one way of slowing down breeding, which would be a good thing, would make a gay human so they don't breed. What makes it better in that area of that science, how I talk about it, so you can debate that, is that you allow them to have a baby. I believe in some areas If you want something that's a bit different, perhaps you need another sacrifice that's a bit different in another area. I'm not saying they shouldn't have babies, but perhaps even a limit. And when they do, they got to be watched and made sure certain ways aren't happening where it's not promoted in certain areas that people are worried about, that kids will turn out gay, which can happen by seeing, like I was talking just earlier about, if they see, they believe they need to be, and they might get confused, believing they need to do something, just like with the bad education, until they realise it's really not them, right? It can trick you. Like some people, when you first start drinking, you think, oh, yeah, I like drinking because I have fun with other people and that, but you really don't like the feeling, the outcomes of being sick, and things like that. You know what I mean? Anyway, see you later. Bit of a touchy subject, that one, isn't it? Child sex. But anyway, you've got to speak about what happens and what's true. And paedophilia and how that rolls. And I think I've pretty much explained both points. Now, you let me know, because I speak about that. Do you believe I am a pedophile? Would a pedophile speak about such things? And if they do, let me know in comments what that could be.